Hello, hello. Welcome to our discussion on the future of cloud data warehousing. My name is Sunaina Abdul Salah, and I lead product marketing for Amazon Redshift, AWS's cloud data warehousing solution. And I'm super excited to have Colin Mahoney here. Colin is our GM for Amazon Redshift. Welcome, Colin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. We are going to have a really great conversation today. There's a lot to talk about, and it's just nice to take a breather and step back from our day to day to spend some time thinking about, the future of data warehousing, and also kind of recap what we've been working on. So I know there's tons of work going on in the team. So let's just we'll get there. So let's start with you first, Colin, and let's go into your take on the whole space, especially data and analytics. It's arguably the most important topic for digital transformation these days and on every leader's mind. So tell us a little bit about your career in data, some of the significant events in analytics that you have witnessed along the way.
Yeah, my journey in data has been very exciting. It's hard to believe that I've been in and around databases for over 20 years now professionally, but actually my journey with data started well before that, like so many people. And I often remind people when I talk to them just about my passion for data and the industry that I vividly remember my first hard drive as a child, and it was a 20 megabyte hard drive. And at the time, I had no idea what a gigabyte was, but if I did, it would have cost me $1 million. And I always remind myself just of how fast not only the innovation changes, but price performance and so many other elements. So I've been really fortunate to work in an area that I'm super passionate about with data and information. And I think what's been most amazing is just how it seems like every year the pace of innovation um, just increases with the digital transformation and the importance of data. It is now built into the fabric of pretty much every mission critical workload across every different industry. And this notion of an information worker, I would argue that everyone is an information worker. So as the volumes grow and the workloads grow and the number of users grow, um, it you have to keep up with that from a platform perspective, from a service offering perspective, from a support perspective. But it's been a super exciting industry to be part of and to see how really data not only enables and empowers people, but it actually has helped transform and frankly create entirely new businesses, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of data that we're just consuming, even on a personal basis today, it's mind-boggling. But so when you think about the enterprise and just how much data has accelerated with the cloud and the number of users that we are dealing with, the type of data users, everyone seems to be a data user these days. So, which is great for the industry. There's so much going on. But I keep hearing this meme or I sometimes see these ads online about data warehousing being dead, which is quite crazy. Have you seen those ads? Have you heard about that? What do you have to say to that? I'd really love your thoughts.
I haven't seen the ads, and maybe that's a good sign. Maybe they know not to target.
Maybe they're targeting me.
Yeah, for that one. Um, I mean, emphatically, data warehousing is not dead. I actually think it has transformed in many different ways, and maybe what is being referred to are the traditional mechanisms of data warehousing, where the data used to be highly, highly curated. There were long delays in the time that data was available and limited number of users who had access to it. And so from that perspective, I think that the traditional data warehouse model has changed quite a bit. We're moving very fast. Everybody wants access to the information. It is now real time. This notion of batched is gone, and so it is absolutely not dead. But I also think part of the success of enterprise data warehousing in general is that we stop having to talk about it as enterprise data warehousing, and we just realize that it has become part of the fabric of how nearly every organization operates. And so I think I think it's definitely not dead. I think that a lot of the methodologies that have been built up over the years are still very much applicable under the covers, even with the new demands that we're seeing for data warehousing. And I know there's a lot of, is it a data lake? Is it a data warehouse? Is it a data mart? And sometimes you can get caught up in the terminology, but I think what I've seen is that regardless of which technology you start from, or where your bias or comfort is with a certain type of technology, the workloads, particularly from Hadoop and data warehouse, they're all coalescing together and have been for some time because they represent all of the things that a very diverse customer base is interested in doing with data. So definitely not dead. Even the words aren't dead and gone, but I think it has certainly changed a lot over the last certainly few decades, and of more recent over the last several years.
Yeah, a lot of innovation, and like you said, it probably is. We may be thinking about some of the old constructs. So, oh, is it in a data lake or a data warehouse? But really, a lot of it is blending together these days, and it's more about modern data warehousing and modern analytics and modern architectures, right? And that's what you're seeing with your customers as well.
Yeah, I think the diversity of workloads with customers is staggering right now when it comes to analytics. I think the number of workloads that customers are doing to serve all different purposes across the entire business, from customer success to fraud detection to cross selling and upselling, from a sales and marketing perspective to uh, running different campaigns and programs. The diversity is incredible, and many of those are real time or near real time. And there's also just a lot of variance in the SLAs and the requirements of different workloads. So the solutions have absolutely had to evolve to keep up with it, but there's more demand than there's ever been for what I would call data warehousing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely heard the resounding no from you about data warehousing being dead, just the evolution. And like you said, some of these really more modern use cases. I know it's been a tough year for everybody. And um, there's also been a lot of opportunity, though, in just kind of rethinking how you're doing data analytics and its architecture. As you're talking to customers, what are some of the things you are seeing about Redshift usage and how they're actually taking advantage of the product and some of the new innovations in the product that's moving the needle for their business? You talked a little bit about real-time analytics, fraud detection, etc. Tell us a little bit about Redshift and also within AWS for data, how we're really positioned and how customers can take advantage of. What are you seeing out there with the customers that we're working with?
There's no question that in a time like this right now, where there's inflationary economic conditions, and everyone is interested in cost containment and really understand the ROI. I think that is actually an opportunity where a lot of organizations are trying to further step up their game from an analytics perspective. I think this is the time where you have to keep innovating. You have to keep looking at ways that you can be more efficient. Certainly, on the one hand, and data is a wonderful way to do that. Being able to take advantage of information to help save costs and identify new opportunities to hopefully accelerate top line growth for different organizations is really important. And so I think even though we're in this time post COVID, high inflation, certain amount of economic uncertainty, I would argue this is one of the best times for organizations to double down on analytics. And it's a good time to that I think a lot of organizations are reminded we have to do the fundamentals right. We have to understand our business. We have to understand the costs. We have to understand what the return on different projects is going to be. And there's no better way to do that than leveraging data and analytics to inform those decisions. I think one of the challenges when it comes to data is that there are many different steps that need to be taken, from ingesting the information to getting it into the right formats and also controlling governance around it. And one of the things that we do here as part of AWS for Data is we look at that comprehensive set of services that we have, we integrate those services together, and we provide that governance across it. And we do this for more than 1.5 million customers to help them solve some of the most complex data problems in the world. As an example, we've been helping companies like BMW make data-driven decisions across their fleet of cars, or supporting NASDAQ at petabyte scale to keep up with the volatility in trading volumes. But these are opportunities where we bring together different services, we bring the information together to different users, and we enable those users to do a lot of different things in that end-to-end data strategy and operation that our customers are leveraging. Our expertise is really around providing that end-to-end data strategy with this comprehensive set of capabilities, whether that's databases, analytics, business intelligence, as well as machine learning, to be able to support any of these use cases and workloads. We are investing in tools that interconnect, as an example, zero ETL. So the customers can actually quickly access and connect to act on the data no matter where it lives. We want to make that really easy for our customers to be able to do the right type of workload on the right information at the right time in the right place with complete governance.
That's really interesting. So, within this end-to-end strategy, I really see Redshift as a central part of that strategy. And you talked about zero ETL. I think there's a lot to, unpack over there. Talk to me a little bit about, our zero ETL approach, as well as, going back to that original thought about really doing more with less in this environment and being able to kind of adjust to the macro environment, where Redshift kind of sits within, with being able to be cost effective and just price performant for our customers. So let's kind of tackle both those topics together.
Yeah, these topics come from conversations that we have with customers across pretty much every industry, almost every day. We hear three very common things. Number one is price performance and scale, as you said. In an economic climate like right now, that is become even more important. The second thing is they really want a modern data architecture, one that really helps them harness not just what they're trying to do today, but all the things that they want to do perhaps right now or even in the future, whether it's machine learning or real-time analytics. It's all the incremental workloads that they can foresee. And I think right now with generative AI and large language models and everything that we're seeing coming to life from an ML perspective, that has become increasingly important. And then the third thing I would say is um, there's just so much data and more users. I talked about the diversity of the users and the workloads and the roles of people who are now data analysts, even if that's not their real job. We've all become data analysts. So how can we accommodate them with such large amounts of information and these diverse workloads without compromising, of course, on any of the security, governance, or other elements? And those three things are really what has driven us across the board. And you asked about zero ETL and how we thought about this specifically. If you think about AWS, we've got great transactional database systems, and many of our customers that are using those solutions, like Aurora, came to us and said, we really want seamless connectivity between Aurora and Redshift. We want to be able to seamlessly set up the integration, uh, get the data moved over to a Redshift environment, either an existing Redshift environment or perhaps a new one, and immediately run analytic workloads against that information while also keeping those two systems in sync. And this is a perfect requirement for us. It really gets into both the comprehensiveness as well as the integrations. And we looked at it and we said, yeah, we can absolutely make this easy for our customers. And once we started, it just opened up a lot of opportunities and discussions with customers around what are they looking for in mixed workloads between transactional systems and analytic systems. How much isolation do they want between the systems? How much integration do they want between the systems? And so we did a lot of work to set that up. We announced it at reInvent in 2020. Last year's reInvent, and we continue to innovate and deliver on that approach. So customers have been using it since we launched the preview, and actually prior to that with the beta, and we've been getting very, very positive feedback with very minimal lag times between the information creation on the Aurora side, on the OLTP engine in MySQL specifically, and when it's actually available on Redshift. So it's been super exciting, and it's an example of just one of several areas where we're looking at the solutions and looking at the use cases that our customers are doing and figuring out how we can make it easier for customers, whether they're builders or end users, to take advantage of the data and the modern workloads.
Yeah, the Aurora integration with Redshift is really phenomenal. And I think it's the way I think we've seen it is it's been a lot of years of work culminating in some of these very important use cases, being able to have that connection between Aurora and Redshift. Do you also see it as the same way? Just the kind of effort that we've been able to put in from Redshift, especially in terms of federated querying or some of the other features, being able to build towards this moment and build towards this vision of zero ETL.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. The zero ETL, while we did launch that capability, we've really been working on the endeavor of zero ETL for a long time. And to your example, whether it's federated querying with Redshift and Athena, or it's the Redshift data sharing, where we now support cross account and cross region data sharing as both data mesh and external data sharing, or integrating with our data exchange. Streaming ingestion, I think, is another great example of support that we do in Redshift to make it really easy to bring information in from our managed streaming services. But there's also, it's not just data movement in, right? I mean, we integrate with SageMaker. We make it really easy for the ML within Redshift to take advantage of models like Forecast. We've done a lot of things to just make it really easy to get information in, and or even if the information is external, make it really easy to access that. And we've done that most recently. We announced our support for Iceberg data. We already support the ability to read from Delta and Hootie, and so it's really about enabling our users to run the workloads that they want to run where they want to run them. And but you're absolutely right. I mean, zero ETL for us, again, while we did announce some very specific offering, or a very specific offering, it really is an initiative that we've been working on for years in Redshift, and we will continue to work on it in many of these different areas that I described.
Right, who wants ETL, right? Zero ETL is the way to be. So it's great that there's so many investments that are, and so many aspects of zero ETL that we're working on that helps customers kind of just get to that destination of wrangling all that data into a consumable format. So now you have all the data where you want it to be, and the data is either accessed in through no-code pipelines, or you have the data kind of seamlessly available from one system into another through the zero ETL feature. And you're not losing consistency, you're not losing the integrity of the data, and it's immediately used for analytics. So tell us a little bit about that part. You're able to get all the data in the right places, not in one place, but accessible for consuming it in the right format. But once you do that, like what is Redshift doing in terms of investments and being able to make it easy for people to use that data and use it for complex analytics workloads or even ML?
Yeah, I think making it easier for our customers to run their workloads is a number one initiative that we've got certainly in Redshift right now. And some of the examples of things that we have done and will continue to do for our customers are things like serverless architecture. With Redshift Serverless, we take care of the administrative activities when it comes to setting up the system, setting up the compute and the memory and all those things. We make that really easy by leveraging the serverless architecture that we've built, so that our customers don't have to think as much about forecasting the demand or the size of the hardware, and instead they can just spin up workloads and immediately get going on them. In fact, we announced at the New York Summit this past summer the ability to auto mount with Glue Data Catalog with Redshift. And when you combine that with serverless, you can literally just immediately spin up a serverless instance of Redshift or cluster. You can leverage our query editor to go in and start browsing and immediately see what's available in the catalog. You can then access that information and run your queries against data that might be external data that's exposed to that catalog. And you can also actually leverage Redshift serverless to create automatic materialized views of some of the information that is external data to offer even better performance and scale. And that's a lot of different steps that I'm highlighting, but the foundation of that is the serverless architecture that I described, which just makes it so easy to take advantage of some of the autonomics that we're already focused on and have delivered for our customers. But there's so many examples, not just on the actual hardware provisioning side, but also in how we can do those auto materialized views and make recommendations on resource utilization that our customers can take advantage of. And then I think beyond the ease of use of the provisioning and of the work that gets done around the service, there are other elements too. I mentioned data sharing. We support both cross region as well as cross account, but that means customers get to actually just share their data from a single warehouse. And they can do that across the globe. They can do that across departments internally. It's all done very consistently and, of course, securely. So the permissions and the access controls, everything gets governed at a really fine-grained control through AWS Lake Formation. And that's a good example of the governance that I was describing. But these are things that are massively important for our customers once the data is there, as you said, and being able to take care of that for them, making sure that they can do all the different workloads that they want. And I think for customers, understanding that we will continue to invest in features and capabilities that let them do more with the data. It's not just about getting it into an environment. It's about making it easy to get it in there, but then, of course, taking advantage of the data that is in there in lots of different use cases. And so we continue to focus on that innovation for our customers to ensure that we are delivering more and more inside and beyond the service.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the supercharging of analytics. And the best part is, doesn't matter where your data is sitting, it's you're able to tap into that, you're able to share. And you talked about, governance through AWS Lake Formation and also all the work with the data lake. I want to maybe double click on the data lake side a little bit, and especially open source analytics. Much as we love the warehouse, and there's so much work being done within Redshift for high performance analytics, we have so many developers and analysts sitting outside in some of these other engines like Amazon EMR or AWS Glue. And there's a lot of different complex ML workloads and other analytics, data processing activities going on. Tell us a little bit about the current state and also maybe the vision of how Redshift interoperates with the data lake and how these Spark or Python developers can think about using Redshift data when it comes to accessing through the data lake or directly from Redshift?
We talked earlier about the evolution of the data warehouse, and I think one of the best evolutions of it is that customers are no longer just using SQL as a mechanism to go into the data and do things with the information that's in there. I think that the diversity of access, not only access patterns, but access tooling, whether it's Spark or Python, there are just so many different mechanisms and great innovations out there, many of which are open source, either open table formats like Apache Iceberg or open source tooling, et cetera. And so we absolutely have embraced that. I think you can see that with our support of Iceberg that we recently announced, in addition to Hudi and Delta. These open table formats, we absolutely believe in. Today, we make it really easy to read into those formats from Redshift. But it's also about making it really easy for customers that are using things like Spark, where we might have users in EMR or Athena on AWS, and they can actually tap directly into Redshift through the Redshift Spark connector. That's something that we announced last year, and you can still store the data in Redshift for high performance analytics. You can leverage all the efficiency that Redshift provides and performance, but you get to still come through your own familiar tool using Spark or whatever it is there. And so being able to run some complex ML use cases as an example, or data processing from an environment like EMR or Athena, is really powerful. And so we continue to open up that door so that it's easier for our customers to come in. I mean, again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is not to just make it easy to bring information in, but we want to make it easy for external tooling to also come in and operate in Redshift, as well as Redshift to reach across to external data and operate on that.
And speaking of ML use cases, especially for some of these developers, how do you see data analytics, which has traditionally been done in SQL? And yes, we are branching out in all directions in terms of analytics. But how do you see SQL and machine learning coming together, and how does Redshift enable that?
I think they come together very well. I think that a lot of it has to do with familiarity of whichever tools you're comfortable with. So we have many users who've spent the majority of their time and careers in SQL, and they're very comfortable with SQL. And many of them actually love using Redshift ML because it plays to the strength of their background and SQL. But equally, we have many users that come in and they're less familiar with SQL or less comfortable, or they'd prefer to use Python or some of these other tools. And so I think there's absolutely a huge role in SQL when it comes to ML, but I don't think it's the only solution. I don't think it's the only mechanism that customers are going to use by any means. And so I think it's really important to have this as an option, and we continue to improve our capabilities so that you can use Redshift ML. If that's the path that you want to go down. But you can also use some of the other external tools. The other thing I'd say about just how important structured databases are in general for ML, and the part that I think SQL will also play in that is so much of ML comes back to the source data that you're using. I think this is true for Gen AI. I think this is true with what you're seeing with the large language model work right now. But it comes down to data, and at the heart of machine learning, um, probably the most amount of time gets spent on the data prep, not just the data modeling, but on prepping the data to train these models. And that is something that SQL does incredibly well. And doing what we refer to as ELT, where you're doing these transformations in a parallelized data warehousing environment and engine has huge performance benefits for organizations. And so, we see just enormous opportunity. I mean, we're already seeing on the order of 80 billion plus predictions a week just in Redshift based on Redshift ML alone. So I think that's going to continue to increase. And I think that SQL and services like Redshift and their role in ML will just get tighter and tighter over time.
80 billion is a big number. I just want to rewind a little bit, Colin, and maybe for our audience, talk a little bit more about what Redshift ML is for anyone who doesn't know. So if you can describe, what the value of Redshift ML is and what is it that SQL analysts can actually do with Redshift ML sitting within the data warehouse itself.
Redshift ML was really our strategy of bringing the machine learning capabilities closer to the data. We knew that our customers, particularly Redshift customers, were really interested again in not having to move the data out. They did not want to learn new programming languages. They just wanted to sort of bring a model and leverage the capabilities of what Redshift can do. And so the beauty of that is you can train and generate these models in SQL, familiar to you. And we've already talked about how easy it is to access the data across AWS with Redshift, or bring the data natively into Redshift. But building on these capabilities, you now are able to put that data to work in ML models immediately. You're working with curated data. The quality of the data is usually much higher. And so the outcomes can be very different. And I think that's been the power that we've heard from our customers when it comes to Redshift ML. I think so many Redshift customers that learn about Redshift ML and start trying it are just blown away at the simplicity of it, as well as the scale and performance of it.
Yeah, the kind of use cases that we're hearing about, especially when you combine some of these features, for example, being able to take stream data and ingest it, very easily into Redshift with low code pipelines, or even a zero ETL approach, and then do ML on top of that, just within the data warehouse. You hear about these use cases in retail personalization, fraud detection, etc. It's just powerful, and the fact that it all just comes together really quickly with very low latency, not for our analysts to just get the value out of data from.
Yeah, I mean,
So yeah, thanks for going through that. And kind of just stepping back and explaining how Redshift ML works. So speaking of models, everyone's talking about LLMs these days, of course. Tell us a little bit about your mental model about how you think about, AWS for data and also Redshift with respect to some of the Gen AI use cases out there.
yeah, there is so much energy and excitement around large language models, LLMs, as well as generative AI. I think the first thing is, and actually Swami Subramanian wrote a great blog about this in April of this year. At the end of the day, a good data foundation is core to analytics and data science. And we certainly see that in workflows. And Swami talked about how data is the differentiator. But I think the two go very much hand in hand. So that's number one when it comes to it. I think AI has been around for a long time. AWS and Amazon have been leveraging AI for a long time. I think if you look at what we've been doing with Bedrock and the vision of AWS for data, we really are very interested in our customers having the right control for that information, not using any customer data to train a foundational model. And we want our customers to be able to have a choice in which foundational models they're going to use. This is an area that's developing very quickly. I think different models just work better for different use cases. And similar to analytics in general, you want the ability to apply the best tool for each job. And I think that what we're doing with Bedrock and what we're doing with AWS for AI overall is empowering our customers with, number one, that choice, and number two, the control and the governance, because you absolutely have to have end-to-end governance around AI. Organizations, many of which are in regulated industries, they need to understand what the basis was for different recommendations, who had access to the information, how was it used. And that's been true in analytics for a long time, and data in general. I think that increasingly customers are learning that also is critical for the Gen AI and LLM movement that are going on right now. And so I think that's an area, again, where AWS is highly differentiated. Again, it gets back to the comprehensiveness, the integrations that we do, and the governance. And that's true whether we're talking about moving data from a transactional database system into an analytic database system. It's equally true if we're talking about moving models around, moving data around for LLMs, choosing foundational models. That runs across the board in the fabric of what we do.
Yeah, I agree. Especially as every company out there, whether they are small or a large enterprise, looking to bring the value of Gen AI or even just AI into their organizations and businesses, security and privacy of data, it's such a big topic. Um, I want to talk about Redshift specifically with respect to security and governance and even reliability. I think these are all big pillars that Redshift really addresses. Talk to us a little bit about how you've been building some of these features, some of the specific features that customers are really excited about within Redshift that really helps them bring that governance to the forefront as well as reliability.
Security is a given, and obviously it's something that we continuously work on every single day. There are a lot of features that we've introduced that customers love, especially when it comes down to some of the finer grained access controls. Features like row level security, as an example, or the role based access controls to um, power dynamic data masking, where the sensitive data gets actually hidden from users who are not authorized to see it. It's really important to have that tight security, but also provide mechanisms for our customers to still be able to take advantage of the information. And I think data masking and the role-based access control, the combination of those two things, really does that. We offer all of our security features in Redshift out of the box. There's no incremental cost for any of them. There's no additional security that you need to add on. You get every part of our security offering out of the box with Redshift. And this is, again, it's not just about Redshift. I think when you're looking at mission critical large volumes of information and the data applications that are accessing those workloads, having you know shared data that's governed and centrally across the organization is really important. And so the integrations that we're doing with the broader AWS services are really important. And we continue to innovate on those. But I think even within Redshift, there's a lot that we have delivered that really helps our customers, again, take advantage of the information and the data for the analytics workloads, but also ensure that it's protected, and only those who should be able to see that information can see that information. Um, I think the second part of the question was more about reliability, and that's another one of these core foundational features. The system has to be available. It has to be there for our customers. They are running mission critical workloads. Amazon is running mission critical workloads on this. So whenever you have that type of a decision support or decision making systems that are near real time running on this, it's really important that the system is available. And if for some reason it's not, making sure that we have the recovery capabilities, making sure that we've got the data replication and multi AZ so that it's in more than one availability zone for us. There's a whole bunch of elements to this that we've done so that we can ensure to our customers some of the highest SLAs in the industry for what we do. And again, this is something that it's never done. We continuously innovate here. We continuously work on this, but reliability and availability in terms of uptime for our customers and our customers, quite frankly, is really, really important for us.
Yeah, I double want to emphasize the aspect about our philosophy of security. We think it's it's a job zero, right? We don't charge premiums for it, and it's foundational to how you operate because it's just so important, especially going back to the conversation about Gen AI, ML workloads. There's just so much going on here, and we got to be able to make sure that even as you're sharing data, the governance aspect of it is very, very buttoned up. And I love that Redshift is continuously investing in these new features. Did you wanna mention anything else? I think we're coming to the end of our session, but is there a topic that you think we haven't touched upon that you want to elaborate?
I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of different really important topics here that I know our customers and everyone within this organization is certainly thinking about. I think that it is just a super exciting time to be in and around data. Like I feel so lucky every day because when you look at what is happening, not only with cloud, but with analytics services like Redshift and so many others that we've got here. And you also look at Gen AI and you look at large language model development. I really believe that we're all going to look back at this time and people are going to be asking us, what was it like to be in the heart of it? And I really think we're just getting started, even though I know that there are some very mature use cases already, and there's some incredible workloads that are being run. But I think if you look at the direction that we've been going and where I believe we're going to continue to go, it's just an incredible place to be, and it's just so special to be part of this type of innovation. But we have a lot of work to do to continue to do, and I know our customers do as well. And so, looking forward to many more years of innovation around this and bringing some really cool integrations together. I think that that is part of what makes this time so exciting is all of the things that organizations have been preparing for in terms of moving the data and getting the data curated and controlling the data. Once you have that foundation, it gets really, really exciting, fun to build on those use cases and take on a lot of what we're seeing in terms of those diverse workloads. So yeah, I appreciate you having me and talking through it, and just super excited about it.
Yeah, I completely echo your thoughts. I think, that's one of the best parts also about working in this company and being able to see the kind of scale at which we operate, working with the NASDAQs, the global foundries, the electronic arts of the world, and just seeing this architecture kind of being deployed and being kind of at the center of this data conversation. It's pretty incredible. I know that we've just scratched the surface here in terms of this particular conversation. There's a lot going on, like I said, a lot of innovation coming out of this team, and we have a lot to look forward to coming with reInvent coming up. So I encourage everybody to gear up for that. But for now, if you want to learn about Redshift, you can go to the AWS Redshift page, and you'll also find a lot of blogs and documentation out there if you want to kind of deep dive into some of these features, especially the ones we talked about with respect to zero ETL or price performance or reliability, security, tons out there. So take a look, and thank you so much, Colin. Thanks for sitting down with me, and just us taking a break and hashing this out and talking to our audience about Redshift. So I hope we can have more of these conversations.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sanana. That was great, and absolutely hope we have a lot more. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.